Chicago 2023. The city always felt like a stadium to me, loud, restless, alive. But on the track, everything quieted. Out there, it was just me, the wind, and the sound of my feet slamming against the earth like I was born to run. My name is Haven. I was 22, a junior at Chicago State, and the kind of athlete who lived and breathed competition. Running wasn't just what I did, it was who I was. My scholarship depended on it. My future depended on it. Coach Davis was the man who held those strings. He was the one who pushed me to shave milliseconds off my sprints. The one who barked at me until I collapsed on the turf. The one who reminded me every week, "You don't just run for yourself, Haven. You run for this school." I trusted him. I thought he believed in me. But trust has a way of rotting from the inside out. It started with whispers. A rival from Northwestern smirked at me after a race and said, "Nice new drills. Funny, we've been practicing those for weeks." I brushed it off, thinking maybe it was coincidence. Then it happened again. My exact regimen, timed intervals, breathing drills, strength rotations, showing up across town like someone had photocopied my soul and handed it out. And the truth finally hit me during a late-night practice, when I overheard two assistant coaches talking near the bleachers. "Davis is clever," one of them said. "Northwestern's check cleared fast. Guess Haven's program is more valuable than she is." The words hit harder than any sprint ever had. My lungs locked, my legs trembled. My own coach, my coach, was selling me out. Not to help the team, not to make me stronger, but for money. I remember gripping the chain link fence until my knuckles turned white. The man who'd told me to run until I puked. The man who said I had greatness in me. He'd turned me into a paycheck. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling of my dorm. My heart felt like it was bleeding out of me, drop by drop. Betrayal doesn't just sting, it hollows you out. I wanted to scream. I wanted to quit. I wanted to burn the whole program to the ground. But beneath the ache, something else grew. Not despair, not defeat. Something sharper. If Davis thought I was disposable, then he had underestimated me. Because I wasn't just fast on the track. I was about to prove I was faster, smarter, and far more dangerous off it. And the first step? Finding proof. Proof. That was all I could think about. Proof that Coach Davis had sold me out. Proof that the drills and regimens I'd bled for were now nothing more than bargaining chips in his pocket. But where do you start when the enemy is your own coach? I began with the obvious, emails. Coaches lived by them, practice schedules, team updates, travel logistics. If he was sloppy enough to brag to assistants, maybe he'd left a trail. Miguel, my roommate and fellow athlete, was the first person I confided in. He wasn't on the track team, he played basketball, but he'd seen enough to know betrayal when it stank. "You really think he sold your regimen?" he asked one night as we sat in our tiny dorm kitchen. Microwave humming in the background. I clenched my fists. "I don't think, I know. I heard them talking. Northwestern paid him." Miguel leaned back, sighing. "If you're right, he won't have left it clean. Guys like Davis always think they're untouchable. That's when they slip." So we planned. I used the pretext of borrowing the team laptop for film review during practice sessions. It wasn't hard. Davis never cared where I was as long as I delivered results. Once I had access, I copied a batch of files onto a flash drive. Back in my dorm, heart pounding, I opened folder after folder. Schedules, injury reports, player evaluations. And then, buried in a folder marked consultations, I found them. Emails. Dozens of them. Messages between Davis and a contact with a Northwestern email address. Negotiations written in polite coded language, but the meaning clear as daylight. Payments, informational exchanges, promises of continued collaboration. And attached, my regimen, my drills, my future. I sat frozen, staring at the screen as bile rose in my throat. Miguel cursed under his breath. "Holy hell, Haven, he really did it. He sold you out." The betrayal was no longer whispers in the dark. It was right there, in black and white. I could have gone to the administration right then. I could have turned it over to compliance officers, to the NCAA, to anyone. But as I stared at those emails, something inside me hardened. This wasn't just about exposing him. This was about making him feel the way I had felt. Helpless, cornered, erased. He thought I was disposable. I was going to make him unforgettable. That night, lying in bed, I mapped it out in my head. Step 1. Gather everything, not just my regimen, but all the dirt he had buried in his inbox. Step 2, leak it where no one could ignore it. Step 3, force his resignation before he had a chance to spin it. But revenge is never simple, because just as I started downloading more files the next day, I heard footsteps in the office behind me. Davis's voice, low, irritated, cut through the air. "Why is the laptop missing?" My blood went cold. My hands trembled on the flash drive still connected to the port. If he walked in now, I was finished. He asked where the laptop was like it was a missing sock, casual, irritated. My fingers froze on the flash drive. My mouth tasted like metal. Film review," I stammered, and my voice sounded too small in the huge office. Davis narrowed his eyes. "You took the team computer without telling me?" His voice was flat, the kind that turns a room colder. I forced a smile. "Coach, there was a clip I wanted to show Miguel. For form, for posture." He stepped closer, and for a second I could smell the cheap cologne he wore. Aftershave that masked something older, like mildew and overdue bills. "You know how I feel about devices," he said. "Leave it on my desk next time. Don't wander." He reached out, fingers hovering near the keyboard as if to check it, and I felt like a thief caught red-handed. Adrenaline does strange things. It sharpens your mind in ways fear never could. I slid my thumb over the flash drive's plastic edge, hiding it in the hollow between my fingers. The moment stretched. Then Davis turned, just to check the window or maybe the practice schedule, and walked away. I exhaled like I'd been underwater. That night, in my dorm room, everything felt too loud. The hum of the refrigerator, the distant thump from a fraternity party across the quad. Every ordinary sound was a spotlight. Miguel came back with pizza and a grin, clueless about the near miss. He leaned against my desk, took a slice, and said, "You okay? You look like you just saw a ghost." I almost got caught, I admitted, voice small. I showed him the folder, the emails. He read, face folding like a bad crease. "We need backups," he said immediately. "Copies, mirrors, something that can't disappear if he finds one drive." So we did it right, multiple encrypted copies. A cloud account under a burner email with two-factor authentication. A printed binder locked in Miguel's basketball locker, because despite everything, some evidence needs to be physical. He had a lock that no coach would think to open. We called our list of witnesses next. Teammates who'd heard Davis boast, the assistant who'd told the Northwestern joke. Some were afraid, some refused outright. Campus politics eats careers alive, and nobody wants to be the person who took down a coach. But a few stepped forward. Lana, our middle-distance runner, swallowed hard and said, "He told me once about a meeting with a recruiter, said it'd secure some funding." Marcus, a training assistant, admitted he'd seen invoices for consultations on the team budget that weren't explained. Each small admission turned the edges of a picture I'd seen in shadow into something solid, textured, impossible to dismiss. Still, evidence is only useful if you know how to use it. We made a decision. Don't go straight to the administration. If we did, Davis would get lawyers, spin a story, and the university would close ranks to avoid scandal. We needed leverage that would force the university's hand without giving him time to sanitize his tracks, leak the emails to sports media, present a clean, undeniable story, make the narrative so public and so embarrassing that the university had to act immediately, and the NSA could not ignore the call for an investigation. That's the posture we took, the one that felt both honest and ruthlessly practical. Anya, the sports reporter I'd met a month earlier at a campus event, had been watching my races. I slid into her DMs on a Sunday and typed a short, raw message. "I have something. Can we meet?" "It's about Coach Davis." She responded within the hour. We met at a coffee shop near the lake, under a yellow umbrella that smelled faintly of lemon oil. She looked like someone who had seen too many scandals to be easily surprised. Short hair, ink-stained fingers, a notebook full of sharp questions. "You sure?" she asked after I laid out the emails on the table. "Yes," I said, "and I want them public." Anya didn't blink. "I'll run it, but I need corroboration, documents, witnesses, receipts, things that hold up under pressure." She told me how these stories die, by getting parsed into ambiguity, by lawyers issuing vagueness, by a university spinning ongoing review. She told me truth dies slowly when the people in power recess into quiet. So we moved faster. Anya and I plotted timing, when the story would drop, which outlet would publish first, and a secondary distribution to social channels, so the narrative would be owned by more than one platform. We arranged an encrypted drop for the files, and she promised to vet everything. But timing is a living thing. It wiggles, things change. 2 nights before the planned release, I found a note taped to the inside of my locker. It was small, white, printed, no signature. Stop, or you'll lose everything. I read it 3 times, laughing once in a brittle way that tasted like iron. Lose everything, my scholarship, my future. The university's quiet threats had a voice now, and it spoke without mercy. I thought of my mother, who'd scrimped and worked 2 jobs to keep me in this city. I thought of the scholarship letter folded into my wallet, the one that said tuition covered so long as I stayed on the roster and maintained eligibility. Fear sat on my shoulder like a cat, warm and heavy. But then I thought of every early morning, every time I pushed through cramps and nausea, every coach who'd underestimated me. I thought of the way Davis looked at me when he said, "You run for this school," like I was an asset in a ledger. No, not this ledger, not my body, my talent, my future. I folded the note neatly and slid it into my shoe. The next morning I packed. Laptop, binder, spare batteries, handwritten witness statements. I texted Miguel. Today. He sent back 1 word, ready. Outside, the air smelled like rain. The campus moved in its lazy Sunday rhythm. Students on skateboards, parents visiting, a dog walker calling after a Labrador. I walked to practice like I was going to run a race. But this was a different kind of track. I inhaled, felt the wind hit my face, and thought, whatever happens next, courtrooms, headlines, lawyers, or threats, I would not be erased. Because I'd collected proof, witnesses, and a plan. And I had a voice that refused to stay quiet. We were minutes away from pressing send when Miguel's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Leave it, this will ruin you. My hands tightened around the binder until the edges bit into my palms. I looked at Miguel. He looked at me. We were so close we could taste it. Then the building's lights flickered. A shadow moved across the parking lot. A black SUV with the university seal, parked where no university vehicle should be. And someone was getting out. The SUV door slammed shut like a gavel. Miguel and I froze in place. A tall man in a dark jacket stepped out, his ID badge glinting faintly under the lot's light. The university seal on the vehicle wasn't for show. This was administration. And if they were here, they weren't here for practice. Miguel muttered, "They know." My stomach dropped. Every instinct screamed to run, but running was exactly what Davis expected me to do. If I bolted now, I'd look guilty before the truth even saw daylight. The man walked toward the facility, phone in hand. His voice carried in the cold night air. Yes, we'll secure the equipment. No leaks. Equipment. That meant the laptops, the files, the drives. They were already moving to shut everything down. I looked at Miguel, panic buzzing in my chest. We don't have time. They're going to bury it all. He clenched his jaw. Then we go now, full send. We ducked back inside the building, racing down the hall to the team office. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it in my ears. The screen on the laptop still glowed. The flash drive still plugged in. Download everything, I hissed. Miguel grabbed his phone, hot-spotting the upload as I copied the last of the files. The progress bar crawled across the screen, each second stretching like an eternity. Footsteps echoed in the hall, voices, 2 of them now. Lock the offices, check the devices. I whispered, it's not going to finish in time. Miguel's eyes darted to the binder. He shoved it into his backpack. Forget the upload. We've got enough. Move. We pulled the drive and slipped out the side exit, cutting across the dark field. The SUV headlights swept past, missing us by inches as we dropped low behind the bleachers. For a breathless moment, all I could hear was the sound of my lungs tearing in and out. We made it, barely. Later, back in the dorm, Miguel threw the backpack on the floor, sweat soaking through his shirt. They're on to us. We can't wait for Anya's timeline. We have to drop this tomorrow. I stared at the flash drive, still warm in my hand. Tomorrow meant no more rehearsing, no more gathering. It meant war. My phone buzzed again. This time not a threat, but a message from Lana. I'm in. I'll testify if it comes to that. 1 voice had become 2. 2 had become more. I looked at Miguel, and for the first time in weeks, my fears steadied into something else. Resolve. If Davis wanted to silence me, he'd have to do it in front of the whole world. The morning felt heavier than most. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the flash drive in my hand. It was small, weightless really, but it carried my whole life. My scholarship, my reputation, my future, all balanced on this fragile piece of plastic and silicon. Miguel paced the room, his nerves raw. "We can't sit on it, Haven. If we wait, they'll shut us down. Today's the day." I nodded, though my stomach twisted into knots. "Yeah, today." We walked across campus with backpacks that suddenly felt like anchors. Every step, I thought of my mom cleaning hotel rooms back in Michigan, my dad's old track medals hanging in our dusty garage, the little sister who texted me after every meet. "You're my hero, Haven." What if I let them all down? What if Davis crushed me before the truth came out? Miguel must have seen the fear in my eyes. He stopped, grabbed my shoulder. "Listen, you're not alone, not anymore. He thought he owned your future, but this is you taking it back. We hit send, and the whole world will know." We made our way to a quiet computer lab, far from the athletics offices. Anya was already waiting on video call, her face sharp and focused. "You have everything?" she asked. I held up the flash drive. "Everything." Miguel slid it into the port, and the files bloomed across the screen. Emails, attachments, receipts. Anya nodded slowly, her pen scribbling in that reporter's notebook. "This is airtight," she said. "We'll publish in 30 minutes. When we do, it won't just be about you, Haven. It'll be about every athlete he's ever used, every program that's turned a blind eye. Once this goes live, there's no going back." I whispered, more to myself than anyone. "Good." We hit send. And then we waited. 30 minutes feels like 30 years when you're sitting on a grenade. My leg bounced uncontrollably. Miguel chewed his nails. The hum of the computer fans filled the silence. Then the notification buzzed. Anya had sent the link. The headline blazed across the screen. "Chicago State coach leaked athlete training regimens for cash. Documents reveal." I clicked, and my own words stared back at me. The evidence laid out clean, undeniable. Screenshots of his emails, invoices, even the files labeled with my name. My pulse thundered in my ears. And then the storm began. Twitter exploded. Athletes from other schools started posting their suspicions, their own fragments of proof. Reporters tagged the university, demanding a statement. Our Justice for Haven started trending before I could refresh the page twice. Miguel whooped, slapping the desk. "It's out there. He can't hide now." But beneath the adrenaline, a chill crawled up my spine, because I knew Davis. I knew his temper, his arrogance. He wouldn't just roll over and resign. He would fight. He would strike back. And when my phone buzzed with a new message, I knew the counterattack had already begun. It wasn't from Anya. It wasn't from a teammate. It was from Davis himself. Just 3 words. "You'll regret this." The message burned in my mind. "You'll regret this." I stared at the screen until the words blurred, like they'd seared themselves into my brain. Miguel cursed under his breath and grabbed the phone from my hand. "Ignore him. He's rattled. This is his first swing, nothing more." But I knew Davis. He wasn't the type to swing once. He was the type to drag the fight into the mud and drown you there. By afternoon, the mud had arrived. News outlets scrambled for the university's response. Instead of addressing the emails, the administration released a statement. "Chicago State takes all allegations seriously. At this time, no misconduct has been proven. We caution the public against rushing to judgment. No misconduct proven." That one phrase cut like a knife. Suddenly, the online chatter shifted. Trolls pounced. "She made it up. She's bitter. She's desperate for attention." Even worse, Davis played his own card. A local sports blog published an anonymous source, claiming I'd doctored the files, that I was fabricating drama to renegotiate my scholarship. Miguel shoved his laptop toward me, furious. "They're gaslighting you. They're trying to flip the story." I felt my throat tighten. The betrayal was bad enough, but the lies, watching them spread like wildfire, was unbearable. People I didn't know were dissecting my life, calling me a fraud, debating if I deserved to run at all. That night, my mom called. Her voice trembled. "Haven, baby, maybe stop this. You've worked so hard. Don't throw it away." Her words cracked something inside me. She didn't see what I saw. She didn't feel the way the chain-link fence cut into my palms the night I overheard the assistants. She just wanted me safe. But safety meant silence. And silence meant letting Davis win. I hung up, tears burning behind my eyes, and whispered into the dark, "I won't be erased." The next morning, Anya called. "We're countering. I've got 3 more witnesses who'll go on record, plus screenshots from the assistant coach's phone. If Davis wants a war, he just gave me reason to dig deeper." Her words steadied me. Maybe I wasn't alone after all. But Davis wasn't finished. That same day, Miguel and I returned to practice to find my locker pried open, my running spikes shredded, my water bottle dumped out, a note pinned inside. "Drop it, or you'll lose more than shoes." My hands shook as I held it up. Miguel's face went white. "This isn't just about reputation anymore. He's trying to scare you into silence." I swallowed hard, adrenaline flooding my veins. Scare tactics, threats, sabotage. They were desperate moves. And desperate moves meant Davis was losing control. But fear still has a way of sticking to your ribs. As I laced up a borrowed pair of sneakers, I made myself a promise. If Davis wanted to fight dirty, then I'd fight louder. If he wanted to smear me, then I'd flood the world with truth until he choked on it. The war wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every athlete who'd been told their body, their training, their future belonged to someone else. And I wasn't running from this fight. I was running straight through it. The smear campaign smelled like smoke before the flames showed. By morning, the fabricated blog, the anonymous claims, and a handful of venomous tweets had grown into something uglier, an organized attempt to wash my name in mud. Comment sections filled with people who didn't know me, judges who never saw my lap times, and strangers who took a single sentence out of context and made it a verdict. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. My phone was a fever of alerts, messages of support, death threats, a call from the athletic director that I ignored because I couldn't bear the sound of scripted corporate concern. Miguel sat on my bed, hands pressed over his face, jaw working like a trapped animal. "We're getting hit from every angle," he said finally, but we knew he'd fight. This is escalation. Escalation, the word tasted like bile. Anya called, calm but fierce. I dug into the PR trail. It's not random trolls. Someone's coordinating. But guess what? So are we. I've got 3 more outlets ready to republish, plus a legal team willing to push for an emergency injunction if they step over a line. Hearing her voice was like being given a weapon and a map at the same time. We weren't alone. I took inventory of allies. Miguel, Lana, Marcus, Anya, the small cluster of teammates who'd risked their scholarship reputations to come forward, and a handful of alumni who'd texted support with offers of legal advice and donations. It wasn't an army, but it was a network. Threads that, when pulled, might unravel more than a single coach. We needed 2 things: evidence that could not be spun into doubt, and pressure that the university could not ignore without looking complicit. The first was partly done: emails, invoices, witnesses. The second required momentum, public pressure, sponsors calling the university, donors asking uncomfortable questions. I went to class that day like a zombie, the campus a place of normalcy whose rhythms felt obscene. People passed me and either averted their eyes or offered tentative thumbs-up emojis they thought might comfort me. I walked into practice with tape on my wrists and the sticky taste of adrenaline in my mouth. When Coach Davis walked onto the track that afternoon, he wore the same practice smile he used for parents and donors. He said nothing to me, which felt like an admission and an insult both. The assistants were quiet, too quiet, and I could feel them calculating. That evening, a new actor entered the stage, the University Development Office. A donor had called, rattled after reading the article, asking where their money had gone. The next morning, the athletic director issued a statement far sharper than the bland one from the week before. An internal review had been expanded, and the university had placed Davis on administrative leave pending investigation. Relief hit like a cold wave and then immediately curdled into worry. Administrative leave does not equal resignation. It is a pause button that gives the accused time to strategize. It gives time for lawyers and PR firms to craft narratives. It gives time for power to mobilize behind the person being investigated. That night, a campus rally formed before I even knew about it. I stepped out of the dorm to see a cluster of students with handmade signs. Names, not numbers. Athletes are people. They chanted, not at me, but for something bigger. A stranger in a winter coat handed me a thermos of coffee and said, "You did the right thing." The warmth of it cut through the static in my head. At the same time, The threats continued. Someone slashed the tires on Miguel's car. My locker was egged. Someone tried to hack the burner email Anya used to communicate with me. She caught it because of a warning flag she'd set. The campaign had teeth. That week, Anya's outlets republished with follow-ups. Interviews with Lana, Marcus, and another assistant coach who agreed to speak on record. The pieces were surgical, document-based journalism that refused to dramatize and instead let the paper trail speak. The comments shifted. The hashtag turned from pity to protest to policy talk. We also started to see the small bureaucratic motions that mean a system is paying attention. The university's board scheduled an emergency session. A regional sports sponsor paused negotiations until the inquiry cleared up. The NCAA reached out officially, requesting documentation to assess any collegiate compliance violations. I felt vindicated in ways that outstripped pain. But every small victory came with a price. My mother's number called 4 times in one afternoon, and when I answered, her voice shook. "Haven, please be careful," she said. "Your dad's health, he can't handle this stress." Guilt clawed me. I wanted to protect the people I loved, even as I protected myself. Late one night, Marianne, our legal advisor who had worked pro bono because of an alum connection, sent a single line. "We have a potential smoking gun. Metadata proves the emails to Northwestern were altered after the times Davis claimed. It's risky to publicize, but it will stop the smear cold." Risky. The word pinged like a warning. If we published metadata proofs, we'd be burning technical evidence into public record, irrefutable forensics, but also a target for legal counters. It could stop the narrative that I'd fabricated files, but it could also unleash a flurry of subpoenas, depositions, and legal warfare that might empty both our pockets and our stamina. We debated until the sun came up. Miguel argued for caution. Let the university finish their internal process. Lana wanted the public to decide. I wanted justice fast enough to spare another athlete the same betrayal. In the end, I decided on transparency. We released the metadata. The technical team, an alumnus with cybersecurity expertise, laid out diagrams showing file creation times, hash matches, and system logs that tied the original files to my university account and proved later versions were modified. The documents were dry, dense, and utterly unromantic. But to anyone who understood, they were a sealed case. The reaction was immediate. The fabricated blog backtracked and posted a retraction. A few more outlets that had hedged their bets began to publish follow-ups that favored our evidence. The university board convened again, this time with the legal counsel waving a printout of the metadata in front of them like a baton. Yet the fight was not over. That night, I found a voicemail on my phone. Heavy breathing, then a calm voice that said, "We can make this go away if you stop." No name, no signature, just a threat wrapped in a promise. My chest constricted. This was the line. You could hurt people I loved. I thought of my little sister who idolized me, of Miguel, who'd risked nearly everything, of Lana, risking her scholarship by going public. Fear rose like bile, but under it was something like clarity. If he thought threats would work, he hadn't met the people I'd rallied. We had proven the forensics, we had witnesses, we had momentum. Now it was about endurance, because winning here wouldn't merely be about exposing a corrupt coach. It would be about holding a university to account, building protections for future athletes, and making sure the next generation did not have to steal their own futures back. And the next day, at the board session, Davis's lawyer stood up to speak. What he said would either break the case in his favor or finally make him fall. The boardroom looked like a courtroom without the gavel. Miguel and I sat in the back, our knees almost touching, while reporters buzzed outside the glass doors. Inside, university trustees, lawyers, and administrators shuffled papers with the kind of practiced boredom that hides fear. Then Davis walked in. He still wore his coach's jacket, like he wanted to remind them of who he was, who he had been. He didn't look shaken. He looked smug. His lawyer, a man with silver hair and a too-slick smile, stood first. Members of the board, my client categorically denies these allegations. The so-called evidence has been manipulated. Miss Haven, though clearly a talented athlete, has motivations of her own, scholarship leverage, personal grudges. We caution you not to let one individual's vendetta tarnish the reputation of this fine university. I felt my fingernails dig into my palms. A vendetta. That's what they called it. Not betrayal, not theft. Not the months of training he sold for cash. Just a vendetta. The lawyer continued, projecting calm confidence. We have expert witnesses who will testify that these emails could have been altered. And while we sympathize with Miss Haven's frustrations, she is not qualified to speak on data integrity. Miguel whispered, They're spinning you into the aggressor. I swallowed hard. Anger and panic twined in my chest. If the board believed him, if the media latched onto his narrative, all our work could collapse. Then Anya walked in. She wasn't supposed to be there, but she carried her press badge like a weapon. Behind her came Marianne, the alum lawyer helping us pro bono, holding a thick binder. The board chair frowned. This is a closed session. Marianne's voice cut like a blade. Then explain why you allowed Davis's lawyer to make unsupported claims in front of this panel while silencing the whistleblower. If this is about fairness, Haven gets a voice. The room shifted. The trustees exchanged looks. Finally, the chair gestured stiffly. Proceed, briefly. My legs trembled as I stood. Every eye in the room landed on me, heavy and skeptical. I opened the binder to the metadata report. These are file creation logs, system hashes, and timestamps from the university's own servers. They prove my training files were copied and sent to a Northwestern address. They prove the versions Davis claims were fabricated, were altered after I created them. The silver-haired lawyer tried to object, but Marianne's voice rose, fierce and unyielding. We are prepared to subpoena Northwestern officials and payment records. You want to claim fabrication? Fine, let's test that in federal court. The room fell silent. Even Davis shifted uncomfortably. The chair tapped her pen. Coach Davis, do you have an explanation? He smiled thinly. This is a misunderstanding, blown out of proportion. I have always acted in the best interest of my athletes. I couldn't hold it in anymore. My voice shook, but it was steady enough to cut through. You sold me. You sold my work, my body, my future, for a check. That's not the best interest of an athlete. That's betrayal. For the first time, his mask cracked. A flicker of anger. The board didn't move immediately, but I could see it in their faces. The seed of doubt, the shift of perception. They weren't convinced yet. But they were no longer fully in his corner either. When the meeting adjourned, reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, my name, my face, my story. It was no longer whispers. It was everywhere. And that night, scrolling through my phone, I saw a new headline trending. Athlete stands up to corrupt coach. Will the university protect her? I exhaled shakily. We hadn't won yet. But for the first time, Davis looked like the one playing defense. The night after the board session, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Davis's smirk, the one he wore when he swore he acted in our best interest. My fist clenched around the sheets. How many times had he used that line on athletes before me? How many futures had he stolen under the guise of mentorship? Miguel dozed on the chair near my desk, still in yesterday's clothes, his phone buzzing every few minutes with new alerts. The world wasn't quiet anymore. It was awake, and it was watching. The next morning, campus was electric. Posters had sprouted overnight. Hand-painted signs taped to lampposts. Protect athletes. End corruption. Justice for Haven. Some students avoided me, afraid of being seen on the wrong side. Others nodded with quiet solidarity. A few strangers even clapped when I walked into the dining hall. The attention felt surreal, like I was living inside someone else's documentary. But Davis wasn't done. By noon, another article dropped, this time from a national outlet. It cited sources close to the coach, claiming I'd been difficult, uncoachable, and prone to emotional outbursts. The piece painted me as unstable, my credibility hanging by a thread. I slammed my phone onto the table. He's trying to kill my character now. Miguel rubbed his temples. It's textbook. When they can't kill the truth, they try to kill the messenger. Anya called within minutes. Stay calm. We expected this. I've lined up counter-interviews. Alumni, teammates, even professors ready to go on record about your work ethic and character. We'll drown out his smear with real voices. Her confidence steadied me, but my chest still ached. Because lies, even when disproved, still leave stains. That evening, Lana came to my dorm, eyes red from crying. She closed the door and whispered, Haven, it's worse. He's threatening us too. Davis told my parents he'd ruin me if I kept backing you. My stomach twisted. Lana, I'm so sorry. She shook her head, fists clenched. No, I'm not backing down. He thinks fear will work, but fear's the only thing he has left. Her words lit something in me. She wasn't just protecting me, she was protecting herself, her teammates, the ones who'd come after. The next morning, the university couldn't avoid the storm anymore. A press conference was announced. The athletic director, the president, and Davis himself would address the situation. Miguel grabbed my hand. This is it. They're cornered, but cornered animals bite the hardest. I stood in front of the mirror before we left, staring at my reflection. The girl who once believed in coaches, in authority, in the safety of the system, she was gone. In her place was someone sharper, tougher, unafraid to speak truth even when it burned. I whispered to myself, you can't erase me. When we arrived, cameras were already set up. Reporters jostled for space, their microphones pointed at the podium. Davis stood off to the side, arms crossed, his smile thin and venomous. The athletic director cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming. Today we will address the allegations. My pulse thundered. This was the moment. And when Davis stepped up to speak, the air in the room shifted like before a lightning strike. The cameras hummed like bees, their red lights blinking, unblinking eyes waiting for blood. Davis leaned into the microphone with that same manufactured calm he always wore during post-game interviews. I have dedicated my life to developing athletes, to building this program into one of the strongest in the country. These allegations are baseless. They come from a young woman under immense pressure who has misinterpreted my actions. He paused, letting the words sink in. Haven is talented, but sometimes talent struggles when faced with adversity. Rather than take responsibility, she has chosen to lash out. I only hope the public will remember my decades of service, rather than the noise of one disgruntled athlete. I felt my chest constrict. Noise. That's what he called me, noise. Reporters scribbled furiously. Some nodded, others frowned. The narrative was tilting, and I couldn't let it. The athletic director shifted uncomfortably. Coach Davis, these documents, he cut her off. Fabricated or misunderstood. I don't blame Haven. I blame those who manipulated her. My hands shook, but Miguel's voice was in my ear. This is your moment. Before I could lose courage, I stood. Cameras swiveled like predators spotting prey. My legs trembled, but my voice, when it came, was sharp enough to slice through the room. My name is Haven. I am not noise. I am not fabricated. I am not manipulated. I am an athlete who trusted a coach, and that coach sold me. The room erupted, gasps, shutters clicking, whispers. Davis's smile faltered. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket and held it high. This is evidence from the university's own servers. Metadata that proves my files were altered after Davis copied them. Payment trails that show money changing hands. Witnesses who risked everything to back me. This is not a grudge. This is truth. The board chair tried to restore order, but the flood was unstoppable. Reporters shouted questions. The cameras zoomed in on me, and Davis's mask cracked fully for the first time, anger flashing across his face like lightning. He barked into the mic, "She doesn't understand the system. She's ruining her career." I stepped closer, my voice cutting him off. "No, coach. You ruined it when you decided my future was worth a paycheck. You betrayed me, and you betrayed every athlete who ever trusted you." The silence after my words was heavier than the noise before. In that moment, the fight shifted. Davis was no longer in control of the narrative. The room wasn't looking at him anymore. They were looking at me. I had become the story. The fallout was instant. Clips of me confronting Davis spread online before the press conference even ended. Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, every platform lit up. Some posts framed me as brave, others as reckless. But either way, my face was everywhere. By evening, ESPN ran the headline, "Star athlete calls out coach in explosive hearing." Miguel scrolled through his phone, wide-eyed. "You broke the internet, Haven. They can't spin this anymore." But Davis tried. That night, his lawyer gave an interview on a sports network. He painted me as unstable, manipulated by outsiders, too young to understand the complexities of collegiate sports. The interviewer nodded, almost sympathetic. I clenched my fists. Even after everything, the system bent to protect him. Anya texted me a single line, "Let him talk. Tomorrow is ours." And she was right. The next morning, 3 former athletes, graduates from years past, posted open letters online. They detailed how Davis had pressured them, misused their training data, even threatened scholarships. Their stories echoed mine, building a chorus he couldn't drown out. The university board convened again, this time behind closed doors, but the news leaked anyway. Sponsors were threatening to pull funding. Alumni donors demanded accountability. Parents called for the president's resignation if the school continued to shield Davis. By nightfall, the pressure became unbearable. Davis was officially suspended pending termination review. Miguel hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. He's falling, Haven. He can't stop it. And yet, I didn't feel relief. Not fully, because I knew men like him, cornered animals, bite the hardest. That evening, as I walked across the dark campus, my phone buzzed again. A voicemail. Davis's voice, low and venomous. "You think you've won, but this game isn't over. You don't know the people I know. Watch yourself." The message curdled in my stomach. This wasn't just about a scholarship anymore. This was about power, about men who'd built empires on silence. I whispered into the night, then let them come. Because I wasn't afraid of being erased anymore. I was ready to fight until there was nothing left to erase. The voicemail haunted me all night. Davis's voice slithered into my dreams, hissing threats I couldn't shake. By dawn, I sat at my desk with bloodshot eyes, scrolling through messages. The support was overwhelming. Hashtags trending, strangers offering solidarity. But beneath it all was a hum of fear. Because Davis wasn't just a coach, he was connected. And connected men rarely fall alone. At breakfast, Miguel slid into the seat across from me. "We need to tell Anya about the voicemail." I hesitated. "If we make it public, he'll claim it's fake. If we keep it private, it's just another secret." Miguel leaned closer. Secrets are what got us here in the first place. He was right. By afternoon, Anya had the recording. She listened once, her jaw tightening. This isn't just intimidation, it's evidence of retaliation. If he's dumb enough to leave voicemails, we can leverage this. But Haven, if we go public, you'll be painting an even bigger target on your back. I swallowed hard. The target's already there. That evening, Anya published a follow-up story. Suspended coach threatens athlete in voicemail amid scandal. The internet exploded. News anchors replayed Davis's words on a loop, each broadcast sinking him deeper. His lawyer sputtered denials, claiming the audio was doctored. But the voice was unmistakable. And more damning, the timestamp matched the call log on my phone. The walls were closing in, but Davis still had allies. The next day, a statement came from a regional athletic conference official, warning against trial by media and urging patience in due process. Translation: protect the institution at all costs. Miguel slammed his fist on the table. They're circling wagons. If he goes down, others go with him. They're protecting themselves. Meanwhile, I noticed something more chilling. A black sedan idling near my dorm. The same car again outside the track. No plates on the front. My chest tightened every time I walked outside. Fear gnawed at me, but anger kept me moving. If they wanted to scare me, it meant I was winning. That night, Lana gathered a few teammates in my dorm room. She closed the blinds and whispered, "We've been talking. We're ready to back you, publicly. Not just interviews. We'll march. We'll bring the team." Tears stung my eyes. "You'd risk your scholarships." Lana nodded. "What's the point of a scholarship if we're just commodities to be sold?" Her words hit deep. For the first time, I realized this was no longer just my revenge. It was a movement. The following morning, students flooded the quad. Signs rose into the cold sky. "Athletes aren't assets. We stand with Haven." The chants echoed across campus, loud enough that the board couldn't pretend not to hear. From my dorm window, I watched hundreds gather. My chest swelled with something I hadn't felt since before the betrayal: pride. But amid the crowd, I spotted a figure watching from the shadows, tall, still, face hidden under a cap. And though I couldn't prove it, I felt it in my bones. Davis wasn't done. The quad roared with chants, but my eyes stayed fixed on the shadow in the crowd. The figure never joined the protest, never moved with the rhythm of voices, just stood there, watching. When Miguel tapped my arm and followed my gaze, the person slipped away like smoke between trees. "Was that?" he asked. "I don't know," I whispered, but in my gut, I knew Davis wasn't going quietly. The protest grew. Hundreds turned into thousands. Students, faculty, even alumni marching with cardboard signs. The university president tried to calm the storm with another statement. but the words rang hollow. We value integrity. We are conducting a thorough review. Too late. Too vague. The crowd wanted action. Anya was everywhere, recording, interviewing, amplifying. Every chant became a clip. Every sign became a headline. My story was no longer mine. It had become a banner carried by voices braver than I ever thought possible. But with momentum came risk. That evening, Miguel and I returned to his car to find the windshield smashed, glass glittering under the streetlights. A note was tucked under the wiper. "Drop it now," Miguel cursed, kicking the tire. "They're trying to scare us into silence." I stared at the shards, adrenaline pulsing. Then they're scared too. Still, the threats gnawed at me. Late that night, I called my little sister. She sounded sleepy, her voice small. "Haven, Mom says you're on TV. Everyone's talking about you." I swallowed back tears. "Do you believe in me?" "Of course," she said softly. "You always win when you run." Her words anchored me, because this wasn't just a fight, it was a race. And I couldn't stop halfway. The next morning, headlines screamed, "Coach Davis accused of pattern of exploitation by multiple athletes." Former students from other universities came forward, painting a picture of a man who had made a career of selling trust for profit. The board could no longer delay. They announced a final hearing, open to the press, where Davis's fate would be decided. The air thickened with tension. Miguel looked at me across the library table, stacks of evidence between us. "This is it, Haven. The final lap." I nodded, my voice steady. Then we sprint. But as I gathered the files, my phone buzzed. A message. From an unknown number. It read, "Show up at the hearing, and you'll regret it more than you can imagine." I stared at the words, my blood cold. The threats weren't abstract anymore. They were promises. The message replayed in my mind like a drumbeat. "Show up at the hearing, and you'll regret it." I sat frozen in the library, the glow of my phone lighting my pale face. Miguel read the words over my shoulder, his fists clenching so tight the knuckles turned white. "They're trying to break you," he said, voice low but steady. "This means you're closer than ever." I wanted to believe him, but my chest felt heavy. It wasn't just about me anymore. Lana, Marcus, the teammates who marched, even my family, they were in the line of fire now. That night, sleep never came. I kept replaying every decision that had led me here. The first whisper I overheard behind the chain-link fence. The first email we pulled from Davis's laptop. The first time I thought, if I say nothing, maybe this goes away. But silence had always been his weapon. When the sun rose, the quad was already alive. Students gathered hours before the hearing, holding signs, chanting my name. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes pointed skyward like weapons of their own. Miguel and I walked side by side, the flash of cameras like lightning around us. My legs trembled, but every step was steady. Because this was it. No more leaks, no more waiting. The final lap. Inside the hall, the board assembled like judges. Davis sat across the room, his lawyer whispering in his ear. His eyes found mine, cold, sharp, a predator's last gamble. The chair banged the gavel. "This hearing will determine the future of Coach Davis and the athletics program. Evidence will be reviewed. Testimonies will be heard." Reporters scribbled, cameras rolled. The air was thick with anticipation. I rose when they called my name. My voice shook at first, but grew stronger with each word. I laid out the evidence, the metadata, the payments, the witnesses. I read Davis's threats aloud, his voice filling the hall from the speaker system. Gasps rippled through the audience. When I finished, the room fell silent. The chair looked at me with measured eyes. "Thank you, Haven." Then Davis stood. He didn't look broken. He looked dangerous. His smile was thin, venom dripping from every syllable. "She's lying," he said simply, "and I can prove it." The room erupted. The room buzzed like a hive as Davis's words sank in. "He has proof." Reporters leaned forward, cameras zoomed, and the board members stiffened. I felt my stomach twist, but I forced myself to breathe. This was his last card, and desperate men only bluff when they're out of aces. His lawyer rose, sliding a folder across the table. "Here," he said smugly. "Are digital analyses showing irregularities in the files Miss Haven submitted. Timestamps that don't align. Evidence that calls her credibility into question." For a heartbeat, the board seemed swayed. But Marianne, our alum lawyer, was ready. She stood, her voice ringing with steel. Conveniently cherry-picked screenshots. No server logs. No forensic hashes. What you're presenting is an incomplete picture meant to confuse non-technical observers. She turned to the panel. We've already submitted full forensic metadata verified by an independent cybersecurity expert. That analysis proves file integrity. And the payments linked to Coach Davis's account cannot be erased with selective screenshots. The board murmured. Reporters scribbled faster. Davis's mask cracked, his jaw tight. Then Anya rose from the press section. Excuse me, but I have something that should be entered into the record. She held up her recorder. We've received corroborating testimony from 3 former athletes, one of whom submitted bank transfers showing identical patterns of payment from the same intermediary account. The room erupted again. The weight of the evidence crashed down like a gavel. Davis's face flushed red. He slammed a fist on the table. This is a witch hunt. She's just a bitter little girl who couldn't handle. I cut him off, my voice carrying through the hall. No, I'm not bitter. I'm not little. I'm not noise. I'm Haven. And I refuse to be sold. The silence afterward was deafening. For once, every eye wasn't on Davis. They were on me. The chair cleared her throat. After reviewing the evidence and testimonies, this board recommends the immediate termination of Coach Davis and referral for further investigation by outside authorities. A collective gasp, then applause erupted from the back of the room. Students, teammates, strangers, all cheering. Miguel grabbed my hand, squeezing so hard it hurt, and whispered, "You did it." But I shook my head. We did it. Outside, the crowd was waiting. When I stepped into the sunlight, chants thundered across the quad. Cameras flashed, but for once I didn't feel small beneath them. I felt seen. I thought about the girl I'd been months ago, the one who believed authority always protected you, the one who trusted too easily. She was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, scarred, but unbroken. That night, alone in my dorm, I wrote in my journal, "They tried to erase me. They failed. I took back my name, my future, my voice. And now, no athlete will ever stand alone the way I once did. Revenge gave me control, but justice gave me peace." I closed the notebook and smiled, because this wasn't just the end of a fight. It was the beginning of a movement.